This is going to come hard for me to say. It took me a number of years to learn this as a Penn State football player. Is strength. Never let someone see a weakness. And what I've kind of come to learn over time is now that's probably reversed. First, I want to connect with you. And second, I just want to share. I want to be vulnerable. I want to talk to you about what I do well. I'm also going to talk to you about what I don't do so well. I'll share with you my vulnerabilities in terms of, hey, I'm just not sure. The most powerful thing I can always sometimes say is, I don't know. Let's find out together. Instead of having the answers, I love the questions. And there's no better question in life for me than how might we? Because how is a question. Steve, let's think about this. How? It's ideation. Might is let's not throw out in binary discussions. In fact, we all in our innate selves have the nature of just gravitating towards people that are able to demonstrate vulnerability. And in doing so, and you don't have to have all the answers, and you list the power of the team and you respect what individuals do. The how might we? It's a really, really powerful framework to start leadership off on the right foot, at least from where I sit and the experience I've had. Nope.
Guest today is Brett Wright. Brett has held senior leadership roles at Macquarie, AXA Investments, and currently serves as Chief Revenue Officer at Tortoise. We're going to talk about many different things. Some of them will be around what it looks like to take real professional risks, how to lead through uncertainty without losing yourself, what trust and culture mean when you're building a team, how to grow, and often comes, from moments that don't go as planned.
Yeah, pleasure to be here, Steve, because I'm grounded in gratitude for this conversation because you and I have known each other for a number of years. We've known each other professionally, but I think our real connection happened personally. And it happened on a ski trip many, many years ago. So you spend time with someone, you get to know that person.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of the things I actually wanted to talk to you about. I think a big thing that you do really well is that you connect with people and you build community. And you've built a number of different communities, including your annual ski trip and your golf trip and also the Nexus group as well. Talk to me about the impetus behind that, building these experiences and bringing people together.
I think everyone in life has let's call it a red thread. It's an indelible part of who you are and what's important to you. And so if you knew me at 10 years old as a kid growing up in Southern Maryland, I was the person that kind of garnered the high school kids to get together and run out and play football or do an adventure in the woods. In college, I was a pretty decent athlete, not the best, but I was the person, ringleader in terms of organizing the post festivities after a big game. And in my professional life, it just happened organically. I've always been attracted to engaging with individuals. And it took many different formations. 20 years ago, we organized small get-togethers where we'd almost be like a salon and come together and have dinner and talk about our families and talking about the business. And you connect and you talk. That led to, hey, we had such a good time. Why don't we do this again? Invite 3 more people. Invite 3 more people. And next thing you know, we're having events in New York City with 100 people showing up, all in the idea to connect, which became the early days of the tagline, catch up with an old friend and make a new one. Over time, that developed a different manifestation. Often the idea is it's never about the event. It's a chance to shake hands, catch up with someone, get a stand, to have a little bit of a connection that extends beyond the professional sense. Most recently, in the last 2 years, I was faced with a transition and found myself, after leaving a very senior role at a large global bank and member of the operating committee, chairman of a fund trust. And next thing you know, you're trying to find your next identity. And I formed a group called Leadership Nexus. And the idea was simply around community of support, where part of it is just a strategy of how you're going to navigate the next phase of your life. And the reality of it is what you really come to find out when you're helping others, you're helping yourself. Take a wide lens approach. The more you start to see, I've got this, others have been in this situation, and it's much easier to navigate. There's a beautiful study called the Harvard Men Study in the late 30s, looking at what's life fulfilled. And they've been following this group of cohort of men, and that became more than men over time. And it evolved with everything from looking at your financials, to interviewing your wife and your family, and is this person content? Are they happy? And what's the marker of success? And you know what they find out? An endemic later in life is loneliness. I have a hard time finding relationships and friendships outside of work. And if your identity is who you are and the title you have, It's a tough place to be when that moves away. The power, this is indelible. Boy, you better find a way of who you are beyond just identifying yourself as your title. And the question then becomes, and who's around you and the time to go deep? And that's where I look at you, Steve. You've always been that phone call for me, and I likewise for you, hopefully, and I appreciate that.
What did that role show you about leadership? When
Leadership's in every form. You could be a leader in your family, you could be a leader on your team, you could be a leader in the community. I guess I'd say indelibly, well, I was always shaped. I don't mean to date myself here, but I played a pretty famous guy by the name of Joe Paterno. And if I think about what I learned from Joe about leadership, first of all, no one wants to follow someone unless they care. You got to connect with someone. I've been in experiences in my past, and the thing that Joe did well is Joe showed up in your house, and Joe sat around the dinner table with your parents, and Joe said, "I'm going to make your son a better person." He might or may not be a good football player. We'll find out. I'll get the most out of him, but I will make him a man of character with values around virtue and courage and humility. And so, first and foremost, you better be able to connect. And that part of the connection is caring. And the second thing that he did really quite well, which I think about today, you know, great leadership in a time of stress is not only connection, but it's also striking the right balance, because no one wants to work for a tyrant, but no one wants to work for a pushover. And the right balance that Joe always taught me, and I always try to challenge myself, not only as a husband, but a parent, but as a leader in this business, is that seeing people, their innate light, their innate superpower, and say, I really appreciate these aspects. In a work context, when you bring these to the forefront, you're at your best. But also, I think you could do more. And here's the ways I want to stretch you.
how does that manifest itself now when you're working with people? Those lessons that you've early on learned from your coach.
From Coach Paterno, and I'll also say, I was quite fortunate. The first time I got hired into leadership was in '06, and had a wonderful manager, and he's still friends today. And so if I had a playbook, what I'd always want to do is you only come into an organization, don't look to be heard, look to make sure others are heard. And make sure you spend time not in the confines of an office. It's great if you set up one-on-one, have regular team meetings, and you connect, but get outside the office and try to have a chance where you talk to someone. And this is going to be really important. Talk about what people feel, what they experience, what they value. These are deeper level questions. Go and tell me what you did on your resume. And if you get people talking like that, I think what you find is you start to transcend the level of how your deeper understanding.
Have you had humbling experience in your life that made you more in tune with people and allowed you to have this attitude towards all kinds of people and openness?
I used to have a former executive coach who always would draw the two circles, and this is your comfort level, and this is your uncomfort level. And all the learning in the world happens in between the two. And I was a wholesaler at heart, once a wholesaler, always a wholesaler, became an accidental leader. And through that, had a number of step ups where increasingly I was thrown outside my comfort zone. I knew intermediary, but I didn't know institutional. Once I knew institutional, I didn't know global. And each step along the way, you're like, am I an imposter? What? Someone's going to find me out? I don't know. And those humbling experiences is just saying to yourself, that's okay. Others have felt the same way. We'll get over this. The more important thing is seek to get in and understand before be understood. Come up with a plan and a vision. Pressure test it. Be willing to make mistakes and move along, and everything will be okay. Because at the end of the day, you are who you are. I don't deal in certitude. I deal in humility and rebounding from mistakes, and how you learn from them is the most important thing.
You've taken some steps in your life that were maybe unpredictable, or if you maybe laid it out, people might have thought that you took some risks. You worked at startups, you made pivots, you switched certain industries. When you were facing those kind of moves, what was your process of deciding that? Like, why did you take those chances?
The part of maturity is trying to understand what you do well and what you don't do well. Sometimes careers are linear and sometimes they're non-linear. Life has a number of different outcomes, and the real power, I think, that what describes to you is you get at a notion of what I call, and I'll borrow the words of Arthur Brooks, who wrote a beautiful book. If anyone's ever trying to figure out what that kind of middle of life looks like, it's called From Strength to Strength. And he talks about this very notion of called crystallized intelligence versus functional intelligence. And to kind of describe it in one day or less, functional intelligence, when you're in college, you're in college. And you come out of college, you want to get an MBA, you're ready to study. And when you come out of college, get your MBA, get your CFA, you are prime because your functional intelligence is quite clear. I'll tell you if you ask me to study for CFA today, I wouldn't do it because my functional intelligence is kind of going by the wayside as most for others. But what increases is your crystallized intelligence. And you ask the question of taking risks and moving around. And I think that's a real superpower for me, because what you then you see is you're being able to operate in different contexts. And it's context switching that either people are comfortable with or uncomfortable with. And that's where the two things, to give you two kind of vivid examples. That's why whether it's sports or leadership, you always talk about, yeah, they got the skill set, but will they do well in this system? Because you're changing the context. You could change the leader in one firm and it changes the context, because it's just very subtle. What's seen sometimes is always invisible in how things operate. And so I find that just quite fascinating. And so in short, I've taken risks. More often than not, had they been deliberate? No, sometimes life faces you opportunities, and one door opens, and one door closes, and another opens.
So what recommendation would you have for somebody that is facing a potential pivot?
The first piece of advice I'd always give, which no one's going to listen to, because innately we're just not able to wire to do that way, is as human beings, we are wired to not like uncertainty.
Yes.
And you're moving into a period of uncertainty. There is always the dawn of a new day. There's always the next chapter. There's always something new. But the problem is, you won't know. It could be a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now. You just don't know. And that's going to be okay. You'll be fine. But the question is, first and foremost, just understand uncertainty is a human condition. And that's why you'll have good days, bad days, good weeks, bad weeks, etc. Secondarily, I think it's a really chance to kind of take a thoughtful pause. I just always tell people the best thing you can always do is sometimes ask two questions and the inverse. And I'm using that very distinctly, the inverse, which is, what do you like to do? When you're at your best, what do you like to do? And spend some time taking an inventory, and you can slip back and you start to see, in these situations, I'm really happy. In these situations, I'm not. If you ask what I like to do, also ask what you don't like to do. And that's why I say inverse questions are quite powerful. It's like, ask someone what a good boss is. Sometimes people may struggle. Ask them what a bad boss is. Well, let me tell you that. And so I love that simple trick or turn of phrase. And so if I ask you what you like to do, what you don't like. And then question number two is, we talked a lot in the previous discussion about context and context switching, is what are the must-haves and must-nots? Do you like to be on the road 5 days? Do you want to work within 100 miles or 200? Is working out important to you? Is trying to define the context, because the whole notion of what you're trying to get at is to try and design your life. And if you don't spend time taking inventory and trying to paint that picture, it's really hard. And when you get a coach like you, Stephen, that follow closely what you're doing on your podcast and the blog posts and the engagement that you do, and I know many professionals you work with, and you've worked with me, and forever grateful. It's just your strength in numbers. And I used to always find it so fascinating, when you walk with others, you make what's called the incredible very boring. And so what I mean by that is just, these kind of signal points along the way. When you're able to step outside yourself and you see others have gone through it, it becomes less scary. And it becomes a lot more easier when you move out of, let me solve my problem and microscoping down, and let me help you solve your problem. We're in it together. And it's one thing when you're in it trying to make a decision. It's much more different when you're guiding and giving someone else advice. Why? They're just listening and they're being dispassionate. And I don't have skin in the game. And that's where, therefore, it becomes much more easier to talk about. And then all of a sudden, you're talking about, you see shades of yourself.
Let's double click on some of these, because I think that they're fascinating. So the first one was around uncertainty, and I find that one is, I think, one of the hardest things for us humans. Right? We want certainty. We don't like change. Even the best of us who pivot and change, like you and I, we don't like uncertainty. It's easy to deal with it when we're doing well, but when we're going through tough moments in life, when things are not working out the way we want them to work out, or at least in the short term, and we don't see the long term, how do you deal with that?
Focus on the plan, not on the results. But step outside yourself and start to think about what drop the results. It's like everything in life. I want to lose weight. I want to get down. I got this wedding coming up, and I want to lose 10 pounds. And I got to get, that's an outcome. Versus, let me start thinking about the process. I want to lose that 10 pounds. Let me start thinking about, what's it look like each week in terms of my diet? What's it look like in terms of my workout regimen? What's it look like in terms of my energy management? It's going to help me get that all along the way. It's a lot more easy when you start thinking about the process and you start thinking about the outcomes. Number one. And so I'll build on that a little bit more, and I'll be a conversation about being vulnerable, and so I might as well share it. I'll give you an example. And so when I went through transition, I was quite clearly, I found myself, first of all, when I looked myself in the mirror, I'm like, man, I am so out of balance. Because like most people probably listen to your podcast, and human beings in general, we're built for striving and obtaining. And when you're constantly climbing and you're in a structured life that has meetings booked from morning to night and that stops, boy, it's disorientating. And so if you put that in practice, then the question becomes, well, then if I'm focusing on the process, not the result, what does that mean for me? And the beginning point for me is that let me then build out the type of ideal experience I want to have. And if I'm thinking about my life very deliberately, it's going to be less about just work and striving. It's going to be about balance. Okay. What's that mean? Well, there's probably a part of me. It's like the old, you're in an airplane and there's turbulence and the oxygen mask drops down. First, put it on yourself before you try to help someone else. First person you have to help is yourself. And if there's been a thread within your conversation over the years, it's about the mental game. Hey, 2,000 years ago, Marcus Aurelius was talking about this in his private memoir of meditation. It's mastering the mental game. And for me, it's personal. The second part is community. And the third part is my work. And then the question is, what's the process? It's what's the scorecard in terms of the activities that I do, not because I have to do them, because they underwrite the person I want to be when I'm at my best. And so when I'm at my best for my personal self, the process is, hey, I want to make sure I get 10 minutes a day doing meditation. I also want to make sure for my personal self, I'm at my best. If I read an hour a day, I feel really good personally because it just warms my soul. And I got to make sure I work out because mobility is really key. I want to pay myself for 65. I want to be able to have good movement. I want to be on the golf course. I want to still be in that trip down there. And I'm not going to end up there by happenstance. I'm going to end up there deliberately. And these are things I'm going to do. I'm going to have a regular Pilates and yoga practice. Same thing true with the community. I'm going to have every year I'm going to do that community bucket. I don't think about it. I organize an annual ski trip, I organize an annual golf trip. Why? It's just habit. Habits are easier to do than willpower. And that comes back to the age-old coaching question, philosophical question, religious question. What's the story you're telling yourself?
Yeah. And I think related to that is also then, what's the story you're telling yourself in regards to what your purpose is? So and that's what I think we're alluding to in the beginnings, like, what do you like doing, what you not like doing? Underneath that, really what is important is that you have to identify why you're doing what you're doing.
Yes.
And if you put all of those things together that you said, you're meditating, you're working out, you're reading, you surround yourself with people that love and support you, and you love and support them, you need to have purpose.
Another book that I find absolutely fascinating, what you're saying, that finding your purpose, is The Second Vow by David Brooks. And in 1 minute or less, and I love the metaphor of the second mountain. It basically describes is the first mountain. It is the me mountain. It's the resume values. It's the title. It's the money. It's the car. It's the prestige. It's all of these things that you spend your life striving for. The metaphor of the second mountain is no matter where you are, and this is the basic hero's journey. You fall into the valley. That's what Dave Brooks tries to describe is there's a lot of men's anguish, women's anguish is on the second mountain. As you move away, if you're deliberate, you're moving away from resume values and you're moving into eulogy values. And eulogy values is how do you want you never show up to someone's, if you've ever been to a funeral, you never show up and go, Steve ran a great meeting, and what was great about him, he answered his emails, and whether it's 12 o'clock at night or 7 in the morning, 5 minutes later, he's going to respond to your text room. No one says those things. What they say is the experience others felt around you. And I think about that and that purpose in life and the community, and whether it's catch up on an old friend or make a new friend, that stream song, we're down there ostensibly for golf. It's a group of individuals that are seeing, hearing, and helping each other. And that's the type of person you put on my epitaph. Did that for me. I said that's a pretty damn good, successful life. I'm pretty happy with that.
Let's talk a little bit more about community, and we talked a little bit about it earlier, but I think it's such an important one, and specifically in midlife, a lot of professionals who were building their resume, who lived their life building their resume, the next bigger job, more money, bigger title. They often neglect that community and friends, and then they get to a point in their life where they actually don't have a lot of very close friends. They have a lot of people that were transactional relationships. And I think you transcended that very well. Our relationship, at many, many years ago, stopped being transactional. And, you and I didn't get anything financially out of each other. We would just like to catch up and be supportive of each other. Talk to me about that. And if you have any advice for people that get out of the industry or switch industry or switch jobs, and that the thing that they're going to miss the most is going to be the people, not the work.
Just think about it. Let's just talk about you and I. You and I was head of distribution of a major asset management firm, and you were running a consulting firm, and there was a purpose synthesis about, let me tell you, Brett, what things you're not doing right, and I can help you, and we're going to grow this together. That's great. That's transactional. Maybe we will or will not work together. There's a little bit of a connection and what have you. Number one. Number two, you step outside the boundaries. Hey, why don't we go have a drink? Let's go have dinner. Most boring dinner you ever have, someone talks about business the whole time. It's really hard to do. And if you do that all the time, I'm sure you probably maybe have a lot of success, or maybe you don't get very many invites back. I don't know. But I typically love to ask about people's experiences and values and beliefs. And it's just a wonderful door opener. And then, by the way, if you ever want a cheat list on questions, there's actually a whole body of work called the Fast Friends Protocol that get to the root of these. And so if it's a fun game to play, if you're on vacation with your family, or ice openers, for a meeting, check out the Fast Friends Protocol. Third thing we talked about, that I'll get back to you and I, is we got out of context. I don't know, see, maybe 15 years ago, I have these ski trips we organized. You and I went to Alta, a group of people that don't really know each other. Right? To think about the leap of faith you take. The magnet is, hey, I like that sport. He likes that sport. Someone's putting it together. They're hitting the easy button for me to bring it along. The magic is the rides on the chairlift up and down. It's the après ski with a beer and some nachos, talking about each other. Hey, I have this thing with my wife. It's going great. We're going on a trip. It's the personalized nature that starts to come together. Fourth thing we talked about, boy, you better not make these things episodic. Don't call me just when you need something. Like, find ways to regularly connect. And that was something you and I stayed together throughout the years. And throughout the years, if you know anyone, you get a little older, you change. And the question is, do you stay current on those changes? And just have regular conversations, and regular conversations of meaning. And usually the regular conversations are typically some type of, I think, a football. There's a ball. The ball is the amount of time of conversation. Make sure you're listening more than talking. Make sure the ball's on the 50-yard line at some point. And then our last point I'll say is that what you find is where you and I were helpful, and this is where people do, is deliberate and intentional, is you put the spotlight. You and I would have conversations, so let's go have a spotlight call. And that was, you remember, you and I were talking like, today we're going to talk about you. Not going to talk about me at all. I'm going to ask you questions. The next time we talk, we're going to switch it around. And so I don't know. You asked me a question about those trips. I'll just use me as an example. And I think what we're getting at is, the lifeblood of you are not your job, and you are not your title, and you're something broader and deeper. And the true connections, whether it's in your church or your synagogue or your local golf club or your community, is foster a community or an identity that's built on connections. Take time to listen and get to know people. And if you make sure people I'll say this again, feel seen and heard, it's usually a start of a good recipe for genuine connection, build upon more than just a transaction.
Yeah. I think it's very hard for a lot of people to think outside of the bounds of the job, right? So when you meet a new person, very quickly within the conversation, the question is going to come, what do you do? Not who are you? And even if they would say, who are you? You probably would lead, or a lot of people would lead with the job that you do. This is the job that I do. I'm a parent. I love my kids. But the question really is like, who are you outside of all those established roles that you play? And I think that, first of all, asking that question, or, it doesn't have to be explicit, but really trying to understand and understanding and knowing, getting to know that person on a true level, and also even being reflective enough to be able to articulate that for yourself, I think gets at an essence of a real relationship.
100% agree. Tell me more. Keep going. I love this riff you're on.
Yeah. So I mean, recently I was at a party and somebody asked me, so who are you, right? And I started with like, I'm a founder, I'm a coach, I'm a dad, and he's like, no, like who are you really, right? And so I paused for a little bit. I'm like, well, I'm the person I'm probably am is I'm a seeker. So I constantly want to figure shit out, mostly about life, because the challenges that I face, obviously first world problem kind of things that I'm facing, but they bother me so much that I want to find a better way. And so that's why I read, that's why I listen to podcasts, that's why I love talking to people like you, where I always learn about something new. So a seeker, I think, is definitely one part that I am. Then the other part is that I want to be connected to the universe and the people within it. So a lot of the things that we've talked about, seeing people, building community, getting in balance with our surroundings and, the earth, the universe, I think these are all things that are essential to who I am outside of my traditional established roles.
Beautifully put. Beautifully put. And you just put your finger on in 1 second or less, just simply, you are not your title. It's the
Yes.
activities you do with others. And that's what I think is at the end of the day on that second mountain. Who are you want to be remembered as? No one's going to remember you as your title. They're going to remember who you were as a person. Question is, how are you going to write that story of the person you want to be remembered? Is it intentional or unintentional? And I think the part of the work you do with meta coaching is trying to make sure people are writing a story with intention and in trying to understand how to write the behaviors to under support that, and then being human enough to know oftentimes you're going to fail to be in symphony with that, and that's where we're going to bring it back. We're going to make sure.
Yeah, and to cultivate things that are outside of your job. And I think you embody that with a lot of the things that you're doing. To be able to be something outside of your job, you have to invest time in doing that, and you have to explore in what is important to you and spend time doing that.
Oh boy, that's such a deep one as well. Thank you for bringing it up because I missed that one. Have a craft. And sometimes the fancy word, some people say atilic activities, which is you do things with no purpose in mind. There's no end goal. There's a difference between running a marathon because you want to run a marathon and do a PB, a personal best, versus I run because my daddy's a runner and it makes me feel good. And the question is, what's your craft? And are you cultivating hobbies? And it's just indelibly important. I'm sorry, it just is. Everything can't be for an output or for an end game. And thank you for bringing it up. It's a really strong reminder, Steve.
What's your craft?
All right, so for people that know me, my couple crafts for me is certainly for one, it's sports. It's always golf for me now because it is a very highly social sport because you spend 3.5 hours, 3:45. You're down here in Philly, they move you along pretty quickly. It's a chance to spend time and you talk, and it really is a chance to have a regular meeting with other men. And it's fascinating as well. I'll go one step even further. Sports are such an incredible metaphor, and sports in general. I watch my wife, and she's got a really rich friend group, and they sit there at the dinner table, and they'll sit side by side, face to face, and they'll talk. You go to any event, you never see men face to face talking like this very often. But what men do a really good job is talking through the side door. And the side door is walking down the fairway, and you're having a conversation.
I think that there are certain men that have the kind of depth conversation and not only through the back door. And I think you're actually one of those. I think the importance is that we spend time with each other, intentional time with each other, and that both parties are genuinely interested in the other person. And lastly, I think that in order to be interesting, you have to have something to offer. And the only way you have something to offer is by if you continuously grow and you continuously educate yourself, which you're a master of.
It begins with intent. And I was incredibly fortunate through my career to work with some really, really talented, successful female executives. And they turned me on to a leadership coach, her book, Brene Brown. And the whole portion is drop your guard. And so what you're saying, Steve, it's incredibly great when you can drop the title, who you are, the transaction, I'm trying to get something down and say, let's just talk. What are you struggling with right now? I'll tell you what I'm struggling with. And it's that type of emotional vulnerability. It's starting there by modeling.
And all these challenges that we're facing, our previous generations faced before. And there's a lot of wisdom that we can get from reading on, from the Stoics to, all the various people that we talked about today. We don't have to reinvent the wheel on humanity.
At the times change, but humanity doesn't change. You're exactly right. That's why I love whether you don't have to even read history, reading literature. It's the same thing. It's the story of the hero's journey. It's dealing with challenge. It's overcoming. It's interpersonal relationship. It's all mixed in together. And the question is, if you want to admit it or not, it's the human condition. And one of the things I really value about you, Stephen, what I really value about our friendship is over the years, we've morphed into this conversation and I incredibly value it. And here you are and I having a conversation with out in person about what you and I do all the time, just one-on-one, being a coach for each other, really being a cheerleader for each other. Because when you don't have people in your corner, it's sustenance. It helps you go on. You feel good. And the question you have to ask yourself, how many people do you have in your corner?
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed our conversation. I feel like we we just touched the tip of the iceberg, and we'll have to continue this at some point. There's so many other topics that we usually talk about and that I would love to ask you about, but thank you.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.